Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. Fine morning this morning. As you can see, I've taken to heavy drinking. Got to go with the big cup of coffee today. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank you guys for liking and sharing this video feed. See how I kind of threw that in beforehand because I assumed that you were going to like and share this video feed so that your friends could join in the conversation. And I know I don't even have to ask, but just in case, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook so that you can get the alerts when we actually go live. If you haven't experienced it yet, it's kind of interesting to see what kind of happens in the comments section on YouTube and on Facebook as this conversation goes on. So it's always good to be a part of the conversation when it's happening. So please go ahead and do that. Also remember to go to fpcgear.com. That's fpcgear.com. Cool t-shirts, support the Second Amendment, not just in how you look, but with your dollars, because all the proceeds from the sales of stuff at FPC Gear goes back into the fight for your constitutional right to keep and bear arms. That's fpcgear.com. All right, well, we all know, we heard last week, there's an opening in the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Anthony Kennedy has announced that he will be retiring from the Supreme Court, giving President Trump another opportunity, another selection for the U.S. Supreme Court, thus further shaping it. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kennedy has been pretty much, he's been kind of a middle-of-the-road vote. He's been a swing vote on many, many cases. And so this is a chance to actually get a justice in there who firmly believes in the Second Amendment, who firmly believes in liberty, a real strict constructionist, someone who believes that the Constitution says what it means and uses that as the foundation for the decisions that they make, because that's really what the judiciary is supposed to do. They're not supposed to legislate from the bench, but they're supposed to actually utilize they start by utilizing the Constitution as the foundation. And then the laws that come, the law that's currently in place, and then their decisions or stare decisis or prior judicial decisions or precedent from there. But that's really the foundation, though, comes from what the Constitution says and means. Unlike those on the left who believe that it is their job to be super legislators and legislate and create out of nowhere justice from the bench. Their job is to create their mode of what they believe justice is, not to interpret the law, but to interpret the law as it relates to what they believe is just. CBS News actually did a very interesting quick segment on some of the key players or some of the chief nominees to replace Justice Kennedy, and let's see what they had to say.
CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford joins us now from the Supreme Court. Jan, who are you hearing are possible candidates to replace Anthony Kennedy?
Well, I mean, the president has a long list of potential contenders, and he said he's sticking to that list. But there are three primary frontrunners. They're all federal appeals court judges: Brett Kavanaugh, Raymond Kethledge, and Amul Thapar. Thapar would actually be the first Indian American on the Supreme Court. The president interviewed him last year when he was looking to replace Justice Scalia. There are two others the president interviewed who also could be in the mix. I think they're probably less likely: William Pryor and Thomas Hardiman. But all five, I mean, they have sterling academic and conservative legal credentials, so this is not going to be a fight over their qualifications.
And Jan, where did this list of possible nominees come from?
Well, the president has worked very closely with Leonard Leo, who is the head of the Federalist Society. It's a conservative legal organization, but also there's been a lot of input from the White House counsel's office, even the Justice Department. So really, he's gotten a lot of advice from some of his conservative legal advisors as they develop this list. And, you know, if you look back, some people kind of were making fun of, like, who would Trump put on the Supreme Court if he got to be president? You know, would it be Judge Judy? This list is a very conventional list of established conservative, mostly federal appeals court judges. It's really not any different than a list you would see if, say, it was a President Romney that we were talking about.
Okay, so as you see, so the first thing I wanted to note was, now keep in mind, this is CBS. So this is not conservative media, but this is CBS who's pointing out that the candidates that are on this list of individuals that the president is likely to nominate are, in fact, they are rock solid. I mean, we're talking rock solid academically and professionally. So it's not going to be a question of their qualifications. It's largely going to be a question of their ideology. There are a number, and one only needs to hit Google in order to look for or try to obtain a list of who these individuals are, who kind of some of the top candidates are. The only names that I've seen come up on every list, there's 3 names I've seen come up on every list. One of them is Mr. Amul Thapar. He is Indian American. He's an individual who actually, like they said, received an interview during the previous opening, the seat that's now filled by Justice Gorsuch. So he is obviously a front runner in that respect for no other reason really than the fact that he's the only one out of all of them that actually got an interview last time. So it'll be real interesting to see if he gets an interview again. In my short perusing of looking for information, I didn't see a whole lot about him on the Second Amendment. So I really don't know where he stands there. But just suffice it to know that he's relatively conservative. So that's one thing to keep an eye out for when it comes to that particular candidate. Another candidate that is one to look out for is Mr. Brett Kavanaugh. He's really the only candidate that I've seen that's been on just about every list, whether the list is coming from the right or from the left. He's been someone who's been on just about every list. He is from the U.S. Court of Appeals, the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Interestingly, he actually was on the dissent. He actually wrote the dissent for the assault weapons ban out of D.C. He actually wrote for the dissent. So it'll be very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see if he turns out to be one. Now he's kind of along the lines of, he's seen by many to be someone who's potentially a middle of the road kind of guy on a lot of topics. He could potentially wind up being similar to Justice Kennedy as a swing vote, which I don't know if that's a good thing. But the thing is, at least on 2 issues that conservatives tend to like, one being abortion, which ain't our issue, but the other on the Second Amendment, he tends to be pretty good. At least, once again, that's based on what I'm reading. Everything else, when you look at who's clerked for him to who he's clerked for, he really seems to span the ideological spectrum. So I don't know if that means he's an originalist, if that means that he's open-minded, but at least one thing we do know about him is he's been pretty good on guns. The final one that, once again, has been on just about every list has been Thomas Hardiman. Thomas Hardiman, he was appointed to the 3rd U.S. District Court of Appeals by President Bush. He is opposed by the Alliance for Justice, which is liberal, left-wing, anti-gun, anti-freedom advocacy group. And they're opposed by him largely because he has a very broad opinion when it comes to the Second Amendment rights of citizens. He happens to believe that the right to keep and bear arms is, in fact, an individual right. They consider that broad. I consider that very, very narrow in terms of its strict constructionalism. It's what the Constitution says. Go figure. But having said that, those are kind of the 3 names that I've seen that have been on just about every other list. Encourage you guys, if you've done some research and you know something about any of the other potential candidates, there's a list of 25. There were 20 names that he originally came up with when he was running for office that he said, these are the sort of people that I would nominate to the bench if I became president, or to the Supreme Court if I became president. Since then, he's added 5 names to that list. So I would encourage you, if you know anything, if you've done research, hey, put it in the comment section. Let people know what you know about any of those individuals, and we can all kind of, use this as a way in which to come together and kind of figure it out. All of that having been said, once again, it is vitally important that whoever the president nominates, that they believe in the individual right to keep and bear arms. Because it's not just a matter of how are they going to rule on it, but the fact that they would even take a case. The Supreme Court has not taken a Second Amendment case in 8 years. In 8 years. Justice Thomas has lamented that we treat the Second Amendment, or the Supreme Court treats the Second Amendment as if it's not a right, as if it's a second-class right. The reason why this particular seat is so important, it's so vitally important, is because this might be our opportunity to finally get enough justices who are willing to hear some of these cases. Now, after this, the next two justices that are likely to come up, I mean, you got two left-wing anti-gun justices who are 80 years or older. So, you've got Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who can barely stay awake long enough to hear a case. She's just holding on. But anyway, the point that I'm making to you guys here is, once again, this is vitally important. So it's important who we select. So if you guys have information that I don't have, that I didn't share here, hey, put it in the comments section. Let's all help each other know who we should be supporting for this particular position. But most importantly, it's important, once again, please encourage Donald Trump to appoint someone who is going to be strong on the Second Amendment. If you look in the description of this video, there's a link. And that link will send you to a page where you can send your message directly to the White House, telling them, please appoint somebody. If there's somebody on that list, or somebody of those 25 who you should be a Supreme Court justice, who is strongly Second Amendment, then hey, click on the link. Let the president know, let the White House know what you think. Because clearly this president has at least proven that he's someone who listens to what the people think. Whether it's on Twitter or email or wherever it is, he's at least shown a penchant, is that a word? Anyway, he's at least shown that he's open to listen to what you have to say. So let's make sure that we make sure our voices are heard. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for liking and sharing these videos and letting your friends know about FPC, the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.